It's Toronto's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
Today we're going to meet up with Brad Pilgrim, who's CEO and co-founder of Parity Inc., an AI-based energy management software company for large building HVAC systems. So, Brad, hi, how are you? I think, before we go any further, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and what you do, that kind of potted, 2 to 5 minute history of who you are, basically.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Phil. It's good to meet you.
Yeah.
Me. It's not every day everyone asks me about my history. So I'll, I guess I'll start where I started, and that's I grew up in a very small town, Southern Ontario.
What small town?
Yeah.
We are Canada's podcast, then people like to know where people are from.
Yeah. It was actually, I grew up north of a town called Grand Valley.
Okay.
So it's in the North Orangeville, sort of South Collingwood.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see you went to Georgian College for aviation. I mean, that was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. So, sort of coming from a small town, it was interesting, sort of starting to apply for schools. I was, I think, on a track one time to be a carpenter for a very long time. I got a summer job building houses, and I liked it. And I was really good at it. I was good with my hands, and I was fairly academic at math. So picking up carpentry was, sort of seemed like a natural fit. But I think when I decided I wanted to go to school, I was actually encouraged by my boss at the time. I didn't have any plans on applying for school. My parents sort of said, you were on a path for a trades career. I sort of accepted that and, enjoyed it. But it was actually my first boss that came to me one day and said, Brad, you've been with me for a year. You're, running a crew of 5 people that, are substantially more experienced than you, but you pick it up faster than everyone else, and you can communicate really well. And, and he actually said to me, he said, I had a lot of the same skill sets, but probably no one to send me in the direction. And so he came to me one day and he said, I want you to go home, and I'm going to give you, $1,500 on your next paycheck, and I want you to go apply for all your schools for the fall semester. And so I was sort of taken back by that. And, but, also.
Great boss. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the same time, I sort of said, well, if at the time, thinking, if you think I should do it, then, I'll go do it. So, when I was applying for school, I was sort of looking at, what were my areas of interest? I grew up, again, outdoors, a lot of time outdoors, a lot of time on, dirt bikes, out doing outdoor things. I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie. So, applying for school, I found the aviation course, and, a component of that course was to get your private pilot's license. And my mom said to me, if this is interesting to you, and I said, well, I want to fly fighter jets. So I think this aviation course makes a lot of sense. And possibly transition into the Air Force and end up flying fighter jets. And I think by the time I got to school, and I realized that, I started learning a lot more about, economics and politics and, just sort of, I think how the world works, right? When you end up going to school, it really just opens up your mind to, you know a bit more about the world. Your understanding.
Especially small town, and no disrespect to small town.
Definitely. Yeah. Escape from the small town.
Yeah.
And so I think when I got to school, I started learning a lot about, armies and Air Force and really what countries use them for. And, my political views, at least at the time, I didn't really agree with that stance. So, I thought about going to the Air Force and said, locking myself in for 4 years. And having to sort of be dispatched if we ever go to war, being under the control of someone just to fly a fighter jet, I sort of said, I don't think it's my path. So I'm probably going to take a different one. So I got interested in getting my helicopter's license, thinking, okay, I'm going to go fly helicopters for the Coast Guard. And then I realized there was an extreme amount of money that you needed just to get your commercial helicopter's license. And, it was, at the time I was told, your grandfather's grandfather needs to be a helicopter pilot if you want to get a helicopter pilot's job in the Coast Guard. So I said, okay, well, I don't think I'm going to do that either. In my school, I really excelled in economics, human behavior. And so and some of my teachers, so again, I sort of had this guiding mentor, my economics teacher, and he said, Brad, you really seem to grasp this stuff. You're hardly ever in class. You're maintaining a 93 average. You really seem to understand economics. You understand trade. He said, I think there's a future in this for you, either in building companies or in sales. And I actually got the same sort of feedback from my human behaviors teacher and sociology teacher. Mm-hmm. They said, yeah, you really seem to understand people, and just it's very intuitive and natural to you. So I started excelling a lot more on the business side. So I guess fast forward, my way through school. Coming into school, I got a job at an engineering firm. It was doing airport design. So I was fairly good on AutoCAD. I actually got a computer when I was really young, and the only program that ran on it was AutoCAD. So my uncle taught me at an early age how to use it. And that actually ended up being a very useful tool in airport planning. And at this engineering firm, that was the exact skill set they needed. So I went on to do that. I didn't last long there. I just figured I wasn't a behind the desk on my own type of person, right? I needed to be interfacing. I needed growth. I needed speed. So I actually ended up quitting. I went on a vacation with 4 of my buddies to Florida. And our trip down to Florida, I was visiting a friend that was in West Palm, going to Northwood, that had also attended Georgian with me. But on my trip to Florida, we actually were going to see friends in Naples. And on our way there, we stopped at a mall. And at this mall, there was a guy selling these energy bands. And it was when sort of Power Balance and Energy Armor were all coming out. And we took a look at these, and he showed me the demo, and I was like, wow, that's really unique. And the health band, sort of, it was a bit of a fad at the time, but it gave you, more strength, flexibility. So I said, that's really interesting. So we all bought one and took them. And our whole time on the trip, everybody was like, these are so great. They're so interesting. It's the demo really got us. And so I took the guy's card and I said, listen, I think this is really interesting. If you have anything in Canada, let me know. And he said, we're just a startup. I think we're thinking about coming to Canada, but we're not quite there yet. So when I returned home from my trip, I contacted this company and I said, I think I'm really interested. I think I can, sell this product. Let's figure out how we do this. So actually I took a contract job on the side while I was doing the engineering course with a dock company, and I was designing marine dock systems for this company. And I went to him and I said, listen, this is a really interesting product. He said, I don't have any money, but I think there's a play here in Canada. So anyways, fast forward a bit, convinced him that this might be the right move. He was pretty convinced that I could sell it and probably build a small sales team and do it. And so we asked for the freelance distribution rights for this company for Ontario, and we negotiated with them, and they wanted $25,000. So again, the gentleman I was working for at the time said, I think you can do this. I'm pretty confident in you, so I'm going to give you the $25,000 and to buy the rights and buy the product. And to my amazement, I was shocked. I'd never taken that type of money from anybody before. I wasn't sure what to do with it. All I was thinking about was risk, right? How do I pay this back? Like, if I'm going to get in debt, how am I going to get it back to this guy? And so anyways, we ended up buying distribution rights, bought a sort of point of sale system. We graphicked a tent. And I sort of set out. My first day was at a show in Barrie. It was Barrie Promenade Days, and we went and set up a 10 by 10 booth on the street, and our little stand, and stocked it with bands. And 9 a.m. people started walking down the street, and we were open for business. Our first weekend there, we sold $12,000 worth of product, and it's absolutely just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. I was like, how did we do this? Right? It was actually my first time selling something, and then I think that's when I realized, like, I think I'm understanding the sort of value and the value scenario of, instead of time for money, I was understanding value for money.
So really, is that what made you decide to become an entrepreneur?
I think it was. I really do. It was definitely the stepping stone of really just realizing, because I think when you're younger and you realize, you have to focus in to get a certain set of skills and experience, and then based on time, you're going to be paid for that skill set. And then over time, obviously, how much you get paid to that skill set is obviously it's reinforced by experience. So that was my understanding of sort of making money at the time. But I think when we started doing the band business, I really realized there's another way to make money. There's another way to invest the time and your life into something that is different than just sort of showing up 9 to 5 and being paid for the time that you're there. So it was very eye opening, and we went on to additional shows. It was actually a fairly short lived business. It was only about 11 months, but we went on to do shows right across Canada, from like the Calgary Stampede to Crankworks out in Whistler, the big music festivals that happened all over Canada. And by the end of it, over the 9 months, we'd done about 1.5 million in sales. So sold about 1.5 million of these bands. Obviously paid back my investor, gave him a return. And then I was contacted by the Canadian entity to actually come on board and do corporate development. So start putting them into big box stores. I learned a lot. That was a very first venture. Learned a lot about it. Low barriers to entry, market saturation, price sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably probably the biggest learning experience I had, was just coming in raw, no idea really how to build a business, knew how to sell a product, knew how to monetize that, find product market fit. But very shortly after we started, I'd say about 9 months, 20 other band companies came in because they saw the opportunity. There was nothing really differentiating anything, so there was no really strategic advantage or compelling value proposition comparing them. That obviously drove prices into the ground because of saturation.
So you learned about being first to market.
Learned a lot about being first to market. That's right.
So you're obviously out of that. Let's talk about where you are today and how you got into that, because you have kind of looked at your profile, and you've got a very interesting business. Maybe you should talk a little bit. Just don't spend too long on it, but just give people a flavor of that's how you kind of got to become an entrepreneur, and now you founded another type of business where you ended up, and tell us a little bit about that. It's kind of interesting, I think, for people.
Yeah, it's I have to say, it's the Parity right now. It's the tip of the iceberg. A lot of people don't realize, and part of my sort of the first business story is like that's a lot of the stuff that's underneath the iceberg. There was a few subsequent businesses following the band business, which were good learning experiences. But again, they you do, as an entrepreneur, fail, and you have to accept that. And you have to look at failures as learning experiences. So, but to jump forward and get to Parity. I started Parity with my co-founder in very late 2016, early 2017, and I had actually spent about 5.5 years post the other businesses that I'd started when I was younger, working for 2 different energy startups. So One was a portable solar company out of the US. I helped them get into Canada and distribute across Canada and land key accounts. And the other one was a really important experience for me. I got to work really closely with leading team members, the founding members, the CEO, and that was at a rooftop residential solar company. That was actually just focused on Ontario first, but then we expanded into the US across 32 states. It was an amazing learning experience, great growth story. And I was really interested in renewables. And I was really interested in, and this goes all the way back to the engineering company, was I needed meaning and purpose to get up every day. I really wanted to do something for the greater good. I wanted to know why I was getting up, what I was investing my time into. I didn't want that to be, and not a knock to any, founders out there that are building great technologies, but I didn't want to help people make more money. I didn't want to help people travel. I wanted to do something that gave back. And that's really where I found passion in the renewable industry and in the energy conservation industry. So when I left the renewable industry, I said, I'm really interested in looking at the consumption side of things, the digitization of energy usage. And when I did land on eventually buildings and HVAC equipment, it was really started by the fact that when I found out that buildings produced around 40% of CO2 emissions across North America, and that no one was really concentrating on it or solving it in a smart way, I sort of had a bit of a light bulb moment to say, I think that's something I really am interested in. This was also very much fed by the fact I was living in a condo at the time, and we had a special assessment done, and I noticed my condo fees were going up significantly. And that's really what started the conversation around Parity, and its sort of launch point was just understanding like there's a gap in the market. It was affecting consumers obviously negatively, and they really weren't able to do anything about it in a smart way. And that's really how Parity got started, was understanding a problem and building the right type of solution and middle layer to solve that problem.
So let's just move on to some of the. I think you've explained to everybody why you became an entrepreneur for sure, and where you are today with Parity, which is I think everyone can go look at it. It just seems to be a pretty successful venture. Let's look at some of the challenges. What's the greatest challenge you've faced in your business to date? And I'm always concerned that how did you overcome it? What did you? We all learn from challenges. How did you overcome the challenge?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's no lack of challenges, so I'm trying to prioritize which one would be the largest.
The greatest one. The greatest one.
The greatest one. We're seen as market disruptors. We're disrupting an old market. Property technology really hasn't advanced, I'd say, in the last 50 years. There's been different types of services and players enter. But I think on the whole, I'd say there's just been a lack of adoption for various reasons. So understanding that you're going to be a disruptor and entering into a market, and really understanding, what that means, what being a disruptor means. I think people think of the word disruptor and they think, hey, it's the new kid on the block. It's a creative technology that, is going to really shine the light on how inefficient other pieces of maybe a market are or a business are. But with that also comes, making friends and enemies, and, changing the way that other businesses look at their business, putting different dollars into different people's pockets. So being a disruptor, it's not for the faint of heart. You definitely have to go into it with both eyes open and realize that if you are changing the way that an industry does something or looks at something, and you are, stealing pocket share, wallet share from another business, that can be definitely an uphill battle when you're the small fish in the big pond. I'd say, going into that as a young entrepreneur, with the experience in the past of, learning from other entrepreneurs, but in a market that, was, I'd say, probably a little bit more mature. So I think even in the solar days, it was pretty disruptive. But I think by the time I got into it, we were sort of, crossing that chasm into the early majority. So it was a bit more easily adopted. But yeah, I'd say that's definitely one of the biggest challenges, was not understanding the impact that you would have on an industry, even though you are small. I always go back to, someone told me at one point, they said, you may be small, but you can definitely make noise. And if you don't think you can make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. And that, always stuck with me, was that, yes, you are small, but you can definitely get the attention of the larger players, but be prepared for, the outcomes of that.
So, some of the things you've been talking about, you've obviously, had some good mentors. What was the best piece of advice that you've ever received, that you kind of, you have one or two things that you carry around with you? At least I find that. And what's the best piece of advice you've received that you carry around with you, basically?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I was definitely given a piece of advice when I was young, and that I for some reason, I think I look to it today, because it was what really drove me, even, from a very, very young age, was someone saying, if I knew then what I know now. I don't know if that's a piece of advice or just an insight, but I always latched onto that. And I, I yearn for that knowledge of, tell me what you know now, so that I can obviously be the beneficiary of that. And it's like every time I sort of think about progressing in a business or personally, I always go back to that, and I try to understand, how do I learn from other people's either successes or mistakes, and how do I gain that knowledge? And it's an interesting scenario to realize that, hey, I don't know everything. You don't know what you don't know, and that's a big point for me. And that was told to me by a very early mentor. Just like it's you can go to school and be outfitted with all this knowledge and really understand a certain subject, but to apply it to real life, you need experience to do that. And that's where the real learnings sort of come from. So you sort of have to fall within, that category of uncomfort in order to sort of succeed there. Sorry, I feel like I sort of went off there on a bit of a tangent.
That's okay. So, just continue on it. This is the lessons learned kind of thing. But what advice would you give? You've started a couple of ventures. What advice would you give an entrepreneur looking to start a business today? Today's a strange day. It's been a strange 3 months, but just let's discount that nudge that we've been going through.
Definitely, yeah. It's a different time we live in today.
Yeah.
I'd say we probably shouldn't discount it totally. I think it's a new age for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I get that. I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'd say with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, sort of just address, I think the post-pandemic world of starting companies is going to be very different from the pre-pandemic world. I don't think there's any two ways about it. I talk to lots of VCs, lots of entrepreneurs in various different markets in Europe, South Africa, Australia, US, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody is they're taking a different lens on it. I think this is short term, but starting a business now is going to be a lot different than starting a business, I'd say, even a year ago. And if I was to give people advice, I would definitely, make sure that people are thinking long term. That's one thing. It's very difficult to do, I think, when you're younger. And a lot of people now, they're or a lot of younger folks now, they are definitely in touch with the new gig economy.
Yeah.
There's a lot more people, starting businesses today, whether it be a lifestyle business or a venture business. And, I don't think there's a right answer there. I think lifestyle businesses are great. And there's been a lot of people who've been really successful with lifestyle businesses. Venture businesses are definitely, they're not for the faint of heart. It's, I'd say it's the accelerated version of a lifestyle business. And just to distinguish, lifestyle businesses are great. They can be really profitable. You can have a ton of fun doing them. They can be super sustainable and even centurion type. So, like you can build a lifestyle business that'll last 100 years. Venture businesses there's really, there's a couple key characteristics to them. That is one, it's very unique. You've identified a market that can be disrupted or adopt your product, and you're scalable, right? And when you look at each venture business and you talk to enough venture capitalists, those are really the big things they want to see is you've got the right team behind you, you've got the right technology and product market fit, and you can scale this thing like crazy. And that's sort of, that goes hand in hand with, venture capital, right? Is the typical venture capital wants the 6 to 12x, 20x returns, as opposed to say like private equity where they're looking for more consistency. Lifestyle business, you don't necessarily need investment. You can grow it slowly. But I'd say if you're starting out in a business, think long term. That's probably something, again, when you're younger, you're not thinking 10 years. You're not thinking 50 years. But it's important, I think, if you want to lead the company, or if you're a tech founder and you appoint a CEO, but if you're a founder and you feel that your vision and mission is to lead the company, you really need to take that role as a CEO and be looking, 100 miles out, 2 years out, 10 years out. And that obviously, your priorities switch day to day and month to month, depending on how your business is doing. But it's very important to think long term. And I'd say, a key point would be understand when you're starting your business and the systems that you're building, what they're going to look like in 5 years, what they're going to look like in 1 year. Is it scalable? Will it work at that stage of the company? Do you need to break certain things down and build them back up? But I find not enough entrepreneurs think, the 10-year vision out. And it's pretty key, and it's been key for me.
So let's move on to some sort of what I term rapid fire questions. Just where you just blurt it out, If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
That is a loaded question, Phil. What would I be doing now? There's a lot of industries I have a ton of interest in. I'm definitely interested in the AI industry. I think it's at its absolute infancy. I think things have really just started to take
totally
shape.
agree. We haven't scratched the surface yet, really.
No, not even close. I think there's still mountains to climb and universes to discover. And that excites me a lot, is that there's a technology out there that we have just no clue, but we understand the potential of it. That gets me up in the morning. It really does.
Okay. That's good. So I don't know whether you're a reader or whatever, but what book are you currently reading or listening to, or would recommend to the audience? Is there something you read or that kind of boom, that stayed? Again, it's a part of it listening to others, part of it is reading something and going, yeah, I get that,
Yeah, I do read. I either read, do the audiobooks. The last couple of books I've read have actually been Been recommended. I do find they're good. One was Ray Dalio's Principles. Really solid book on investment principles. Ray Dalio was a very successful Wall Street trader. Many years. Really started out with the spreadsheets and probably not as far back as like an abacus, but he's definitely one of the first.
One of the first.
So his book, very sound principles, investment principles. It's sort of getting back to some of the basics, and stuff that you may already know, but it's great to have it reinforced and listen to it explained and why why people think that way. Another one is if you haven't read it, it's a great read. I think it's gone through about 50 different versions. It's Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm.
Yes.
Amazing book.
It's a great book. Yes.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's got to be a staple for every entrepreneur. There's an Adam Grant book called The Originals. It explains original thinking. So how to be an outside of the box thinker or an original thinker. It's fantastic. Those are a few.
Okay. I love this question. Are you a morning or a night person?
I can't say I'm both, but I'm a night person.
You're a night. Okay. Most of the people I interview are morning people. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And speaking about nighttime, what's keeping you up at night these days?
The construction outside my condo. No, that's actually what wakes me up in the morning.
Yeah.
No, I definitely operate pretty late into the night. If you asked a lot of people that work with me, getting emails at 9, 10 o'clock at night, it's not irregular. But I'm usually, there reading something, getting ready for tomorrow, working on, strategic initiative, even if it's on my own for my own notes, but probably till, midnight. But what keeps me up at night is probably, I think like every entrepreneur, when you start a business, you feel that your product is totally making sense. It's got the, best product market fit. You don't know why it's not being, why doesn't every single person in sort of your market or the world buy it? And I think it's, how do you progress? How do you grow faster? How do you tweak your process or outline or market your product so that more and more people understand it? So I'm constantly thinking about growth and how people are understanding the product that we're selling, and outlining again that sort of Herculean effort reason of why we need to do it. And it's a lot of it focuses around climate change.
So apart from your condo, which we're all stuck in the same place at the moment, what's your most favorite place in the world?
Possibly the driver's seat of my car, which may sound strange.
Interesting. I haven't had that one before. And I don't know if you listened to the end of any of the other podcasts that we've done, but we usually finish off with this tropical island question, which is kind of fun, especially in COVID times, because we can't get to one. But imagine you are on a small tropical island in the middle of the ocean. There's only one phone booth, and there's absolutely no internet. We drop you off there with no technology, so you got nothing, basically. At any time, you can use the phone booth to call us, and the boat will come and pick you up. How long do you last before you make the call, and what do you do?
So I'm surviving on this island?
Yeah. How long do you survive? I mean, what do you do?
Well, I'd say it depends on what the goal is. If the goal is to survive there as long as possible, or it's to survive a certain amount of time,
Mhm.
It's
your goal, so you have to just. We don't set that. We don't give that. You can leave right away. You can.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that. I really enjoy the beach, so I have to say I'm going to stay for a while.
That's it. Enjoy the
Yeah.
quiet. Enjoy the quiet.
That's it. Yeah. I like fishing.
I'll probably stay for 2 or 3 days and then bug out again. Basically, that's my thing. Okay. Hey, Brad, it's really been good seeing you. So that's some really interesting stuff there. Yeah, that was very interesting. So thanks for the interview. And viewers and listeners sometimes like to get a hold of our interviews. How can they get a hold of you if they need to?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Brad Pilgrim. Yeah, that's probably the best way. I'm probably the most active on that. I don't spend a ton of time on social networks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Brad, thank you for coming on Canada's podcast. It's been great meeting you, and good luck in better times.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.